Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Den. Welcome to London. Welcome to the capital. Over the top of that stand, you can't see it now because of the light. You get a beautiful view of Canary Wharf, and that's about the only beautiful view I had this afternoon, to be honest, because Norwich City here. I suppose I should start by saying Happy Easter first and foremost. It's not been a Happy Easter for Norwich City. Seamless segue. They've been beaten here this afternoon by 3-1 by Alex Neil's Millwall. And I think after what we saw on Friday at Carrow Road, a 5-3 hammering by Portsmouth, a scoreline that flattered them really, and accusations not just from me but also from the head coach, from the fans, of players noticeably chucking it in, throwing it in for want of a better term, not running, not pressing, not tracking back. I think we were probably all expected to see a little bit of a response here today and expected to see a Norwich City performance that on the very face of it had at least those qualities. Whether it ended in victory, draw, defeat, at least had those kind of fighting qualities about it. A bit more grit, a bit more steel, a bit more competitiveness about it, and it just didn't. It was a performance with probably one, two maybe redeeming features. I thought it was an extremely poor showing off the back of what we saw on Friday, where some of that group of players had their professionalism questioned, had their willingness to represent the club and their professional pride questioned as well. And once again, I've spoken to Josh Sargent post game, and when he talks about players maybe not doing the bare minimum and not tracking back and not working their hardest, and I asked him a very pointed question about whether it's a group that's still together, and there was a very long, pregnant pause. I don't think out of mystery, but I think he was just trying to word his answer very carefully. But none of it, I think, on the pitch feels like it's working, feels like it's together. You look at the away end, rightfully very angry by what they saw today. There were chants in the second half of "you're not fit to wear the shirt" aimed at the players. I must admit I couldn't hear anything post game because this stand was being absolutely drowned out with music. Millwall, of course, needed to win today to keep what is very faint playoff ambitions alive. They were rightly celebrating that, but you could see the gestures, you could see the arms being outstretched, you could see the frustration and fury that was in that away, and look, rightly so. 2,600 plus inside that place today. Some of them were delayed because they had traffic in central London. The way that they went, missed sort of a portion for the game. I bet they wished they missed a lot more of it than perhaps they did. But some of that away end would have travelled to Plymouth, would have travelled to Bristol, would have travelled to Burnley, would have come here today. And in all of those games, certainly before half-time, obviously Norwich scored today, but in some other cases, they've been 2-0 down at half-time. It's hard to escape the feeling, and that's because it's a truth, that fan base that travel, that support, that have backed, I think, by and large, what has gone on this season. There's been a lot more patience shown here than there has been at other football clubs. They should be seeing better. They should be seeing more. They deserve to be seeing players track back. They deserve to see players representing the shirt with pride and giving 100%. I'm not sure that all of the players on that pitch today, again, can say that they did. And there's a mix, really. There's that quality, and I think I don't want to call out players, but Marcelino Nunez, I think this is the third game in a row now where I felt he has just not been at the level and looked, and look, it's only a look. I can only go off that. As I said, he's not here to defend himself, but it looks like a real disinterest, to be honest. We could chuck others in there. I don't want to single him out individually, but I think he's representative visibly. Obviously, hooked twice at half-time at Plymouth, and on Friday, I thought he was incredibly fortunate to start today and incredibly fortunate to stay on the pitch for as long as he did. There were others as well. I thought bore her science as well at points. Lack of tracking back. Obviously, Shane Duffy's roles in the 2 goals on Friday have been highlighted. Although I thought he was okay today. It was probably more Jose Cordoba. So you've got that mix. You've got a mix of players lacking confidence, players lacking form. Cordoba's one of those. He was culpable, I felt, for all the goals. Gave the ball away for the first one. Gave the free kick away for the second, which was needless, and then his man runs off him from the third. And there's really good attributes in him, and you can see it, but that inconsistency, that sort of flow is quite representative of Norwich, really, because it would be a lie, I think, to stand here and say that this season there haven't been good moments. There have. There's been some great wins, some fantastic performances. All of those probably came in the first half of the season. And when they've played that way, they've been reminiscent probably of a very good championship team. Certainly a team that looks capable of being in the top 6. The way they're playing at the moment, you're grateful that the season is coming to a halt and there is no possible way for this team to go down, because they are playing every inch and every minute, really, barring 6 or 7 at the start. they look like relegation fodder the way they're playing at the moment, just in terms of their organisation or lack of, their lack of defensive structure, how soft they are, their inability to be even competitive at this level. You think about what they did in the first 6 or 7 minutes. They kept possession. They were neat and tidy. They didn't create much. Millwall go down the pitch. First cross into the box is cleared. Second one is deflected into the net. 1-0. Set piece from the right after a needless tackle from Jose Cordoba. The smallest man on the pitch gets ahead to it. It's 2-0. Second half, they had one ruled out for offside just before, but that was another free header. If that wasn't warning enough, here's another one, and Ivanovic just runs up between Cordoba and Stacey to nod into the back of the net. We're not talking about opponents carving Norwich City open or scoring really tricky goals. They're soft goals, and I think the reality, I think someone on the live blog today summed it up quite well. Obviously, I've been here, I haven't been watching the Sky footage, but there was apparently a line in the Sky commentary that said every time there was a 50-50 or a ball dropped or a moment or a bit of, competitive edge, individual battle, and the ball fell to anybody, it felt like nobody in yellow and green was going to win it. And that's the way it felt all afternoon. And that is, a really concerning lack of personality and character that this team is showing at the moment. And, they're losing games, fine. And you could live with losing games if they were being outplayed every week and they were showing some fight in them. But they're losing games by looking pretty listless, to be honest, and by looking like a team that is individual. And confused as well in the style of play. I think we've seen an erosion of that over the last few weeks from a very clear, distinct style of play where they try and play through teams and they try and be composed and calm on the ball. And that's eroded now to pretty aimless long balls, stodgy play. And again, some of that feeds from a lack of confidence. And it's a team, a club, a group of players, a head coach, all of it, who just are longing now for the end of the season. But the reality is they've got 2 games now to go, and they're 2 games that they can't let pass by, because every moment, you see that away end today, you think about how this season has been billed, even by those maybe who have described it transitionally and described it as a little bit of a process. That's all fine, but the soundtrack that can't be sort of echoing out as you close the first season is "You're not fit to wear the shirt," is chants against the head coach, is chants against the way they're playing, and that is not what anybody from a Norwich City persuasion wants to hear. I mean, the fact they've lost today, they are now unable to reach 60 points, which has been their lowest total in the Championship, I think, for 16 years, since that relegation from League One. They're going to fail to meet that points target this year, let alone top 6. They're going to finish closer to the relegation zone than they have the playoffs. And it's a really sad end. And it looks a really sad team watching it play at the moment. There's nothing about it. There's no energy. There's no intent. There's no aggression. There's no competition. There's no distinct style of play. It's just sad and sorry, and just looks like it's ready to roll down, lay down, and accept its fate. And that's a really sorry position to be in. And I said it on Friday. Really, you can look at the head coach, and I think it's a valid argument. People always look at the head coaches and managers in modern football. That's the way the game works, right? We all know that. You go on a run of 1 win in 10, your position's going to be called into question. I don't think Johannes Oftorp can have any arguments about that. As I said last year with David Wagner, at most clubs, a run of form like that would result in somebody losing their job. That's not what I'm saying should happen. I'm saying that's the case in a lot of campaigns. The fact that you haven't got a full away end singing that, chanting that, I think it shows the belief that people have or want to believe in what they're seeing at the moment. But performances in the last few weeks is making it incredibly difficult when Norwich are soft and they've got a group of players that maybe just don't look like they're representing the club very well, to be frank. And it leaves you feeling that there's a major squad overhaul that's needed, because if you're going to keep the head coach, you have to change the squad, in my view. And you look at the last 3 seasons, really. Dean Smith had it. He had a run like this. David Wagner had 2 runs like this, really, at the end of his sort of first half season in charge. And obviously in the autumn, albeit he would argue there were some injuries there, Johannes Oftorp is having one at the moment now. And the factor that runs throughout all of those is a group of players, and some of the players that are in that dressing room. And maybe that's unfair on some, but it's the reality. And I just feel very frustrated for those Norwich fans that have made the journey here this afternoon, that should have seen off the back of Friday, not that Friday should have ever happened, but the fact that it did. You need to see a response. You need to see a level of performance, and just did not get anywhere near that today. We're talking about redeeming features. Really, I'm talking about Jacob Wright. I mean, he's the only Norwich player at the moment. Maybe Josh Sargent as well. We could throw in that. I thought Jack Stacey, maybe another one you can throw in that. Kenny McLean, I think, as the game went on, probably as well. You're picking out a handful of players who you're looking at and going, yeah, they're giving their all, let alone playing well. I think there's probably 3 or 4 of those players that didn't play well today. Jacob Wright, I think over this run of games has stepped forward, has been a player who's put his hand up, who's trying to make things happen, who's trying to play. 3 assists in his last 2 games, all set pieces, show the quality that he's bringing and the threat that he's bringing for Norwich City. But that bravery to take the ball, to play, and that certainly wasn't true of other Norwich City players in that midfield today who at points were either making really bad decisions or didn't look remotely interested in having the ball and holding the ball. He is a complete opposite to that. And I think it speaks volumes, actually, when, you've got the scene at the end of the game where the players have gone over to the fans. They've got a mouthful, rightly. I'm not really sure what else they could expect or maybe deserved from that sort of situation. The 2 men you had out there sort of behind everyone else, Jacob Wright and Callum Doyle. And for all the fury and anger there was in that away end, there was real applause for those 2. And, the fact it's 2 lone players really that are stood there, maybe taking it and absorbing it and listening to it, maybe that speaks its own story at the moment. And, this is a group of players that have got 2 games to go. They can't perform. I say they can't perform. Maybe they will perform. But for me now, if I was a player in that dressing room, park anything else. Park the results, park the performances, park the way they're playing, park any grievances they have with the manager, the club, the system. If they think they should be here, shouldn't be here, won't be here, will be here. If your professional pride is getting questioned, if your work ethic is getting questioned, if you're getting chance if you're not fit to wear the shirt from an away end, I would feel a real endeavour and hunger and desire to step up, to step in, to show actually, to try and prove those people wrong and to try to show that I am representing the club in the right way. It's difficult at the moment to see how this Norwich team is going to win either of the, or maybe even not lose either of the remaining 2 games on the basis of what we've seen over this Easter weekend. It's been 2 rank performances and individually and collectively, and from a strategy perspective, it looks so far removed from maybe what Norwich City fans wanted or expected on the back of this performance. And that's the frustration, because Millwall, they were beaten 4-1 on Good Friday. This is probably the easiest game they're going to have this season. They didn't have to work entirely hard to win the ball. They didn't have to work hard to construct chances. And it's the story in many ways of this Norwich City season. And if it's the case 43 games in, 44 games in, it's not going to be any different after 46. And I've said this a few times. And it's been a theme throughout the season, I think, that this is a group that's been too easy to score against, that's been defensively porous all season. You cannot keep giving teams 2-0 head starts away from home and expect, well, any time really, at home or away from home, and expecting it at this level to come away with a result or any result. And that will be the frustration, because, as I've said, and I said in the podcast at the weekend, this is a group of players who, in February, at the start of February, had just gone away to Watford. They just won 1-0. They were 2 points off the top 6. They had a run of fixtures that, it's never easy in this league, but a run of fixtures, particularly at home, that felt favourable. That, felt like there's been so many points at this season where it's felt like Johannes Torup, it's felt like his group haven't had the cards in their favour. Actually, for that period, it felt like they did. They had Sainz back, Sargent back, they had key players back, Gunn back, McLean back, Nunez fit, Callum Doyle available. This is a group of players who are better than what we are seeing at the moment. And, that's twofold. Is it a head coach? Is it the players? In truth, it's probably both. You've got a young head coach there who clearly is in his first year in the Championship. I think we can all see that this is a very difficult moment. And I think it's difficult in the Championship when you get on a run, probably of winning and losing, to break that rhythm, to break that cycle, to break that momentum. And particularly when you've got a group of players that are performing and playing in the way that they are, where they are just so lacking in the basics required at this level to be competitive. And if you don't have those, you lose against Plymouth, you lose against Bristol City, you lose against Portsmouth, you lose here today, and you lose by big margins. 2 goals today, it could have been more, and it was 2 goals on Friday, and it should have been more. And that is, the real frustration. And I think everybody now is looking to a summer where, and I said this on Friday, this maybe is the one positive, if we want to sort of scrape the barrel, is that everybody, Ben Napper, Johannes Torup, Mark Atanasio and his group in America, all of the key players in this sorry scene at the moment can see laid bare in front of them the deficiencies and just how short this playing group is at the moment, and the spiral out of control of their performances. And Johannes Oftorp in his defence is probably in a position whereby, he came out very publicly. He called out a lot of those players on Friday for not being motivated, for lacking motivation. And because of injuries, because of the lack of options he has in the squad, you've got a bench today, Liam Gibbs, who I thought showed great energy when he came on and really, really good intent to try and at least make something happen. And the fact that feels like something that is worth a mention now feels, is mind blowing, really. You got Force, obviously he's come back from a major injury. Forson has not been fit for a prolonged period. You've got Dylan Jones on the bench, an extremely young man who at the start of the season was playing in the 7th tier of non-league and was training to be a PE teacher, and a remarkable rise. But they're the options that Norwich City have on the bench, and you can understand why it's difficult at the moment. Where he's not helping himself, and this is admittedly is McConville not getting more minutes than perhaps he is. Players like Jakob Sorensen, Onel Hernandez still coming on from the bench, even with the omission that those guys maybe aren't even particularly doing anything wrong, but it's the optics of it, and this is where now there needs to be a turning of the page. You've got Borja Sainz today being subbed off, pre-planned or not. He walks down the tunnel looking frustrated. It just everything about this at the moment feels sad. It feels sorry, and it feels very difficult how it is going to stop in the last 2 games. Beyond, obviously, the season sort of them being put out of their misery with the season coming to a close, but this was the point of the year, really, where I had Norwich 13th in the table. Have I been massively surprised by the inconsistency, by the pendulum swinging performances? Not massively. Did I expect a better end to the season than this? Absolutely. This should be the point where, at the end of year 1, you should be pushing harder, pushing the accelerator, showing signs of life. And this is a Norwich team that's showing very few signs of life. It feels like a Norwich team that's on life support, waiting for the end of the season for the plug to be pulled out. And that is the case for some of those individual players in terms of their futures here as well. And this week, Norwich will try and turn the wheel. They will announce, obviously, the players who are leaving and who are out of contract. That is the start of what needs to be a very big summer. And you get that sense speaking to people, there's recognition of that. And, it's going to be a case of enduring it and probably preventing the damage damage limitation for the last 2 games. What a sorry situation that is for Norwich City to be in. And at the very moment, it's difficult to kind of imagine how they're going to pick up another point, and that's on the basis of what we've seen here today. I know that's a bit doom and gloom. I know I don't really have much positives for you. Norwich scored from another set piece. That's a positive I can offer you. There's been a lot of criticism on that this season, but I think that's the 4th in 3 games now. Jack Stacey, obviously, Josh Sargent scored from the second phase. Emi Marcondes, not if you left Carrow Road early, you wouldn't have seen it, but that was a set piece. Shane Duffy today from a set piece as well. Speaks to the quality, I think, that Jacob Wright's got in there. I know there's a lot of concern about his situation, but that is pretty much all agreed in terms of with player. That has been the case since January. It's just now about Norwich obviously triggering that option and get the sense that he wants to be here, and feels increasingly like that's one they need to get done pretty quickly to set the tone for the summer. Because if I'm a fan at the moment, leaving that away end, if I'm on the coach back to Norfolk, it's very little to be optimistic and enthusiastic about this group or this situation at the moment, and that's the reality. And you come to a Millwall team. Norwich, I feel, have a better individual squad than Millwall and are so far off it in terms of what they are as a team. Millwall were excellent today. We know what Alex Neil does with teams, and he looks like he's doing that with Millwall as well, even if it may pan out that they miss out on the playoffs. Sorry, I can't be more optimistic or give you any more straws to clutch at than that, I'm afraid. This was a bad one. Friday was a bad one. And it's Middlesbrough on Saturday. And if you are going, I salute you all. Thank you very much for watching. Enjoy what's rest of your Easter. Go and eat a whole Easter egg and, just sink yourself in chocolate, because I think that's what I'm going to do now. Safe trip back to everybody who travelled, and, of course, plenty more reaction analysis, if you can stomach it, at pinkun.com. Thanks for watching. See you soon.